Hey guys, this is Dagon123, and welcome to
Tenchicast.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the next exciting episode of Tenchicast, presented by Tenchiforum.com. Tenchi Muyo continues to develop, and we continue on the crazy roller coaster of the series with part 2 of the Tenchi Muyo podcast. To help us into our seats and lower the safety bar on this coaster, I have a fantastic crew in Tenchicast this week. Chuck.
I'm back, baby.
Pie.
Where's my Universe 2, damn it?
Nil.
There's over $10,000 here. That's a lot of Girl Scout cookies.
And a first-timer in Tenchicast, nerdcore rap artist, Yoku Masaki.
Yeah. sorry about that. Just had my coffee. Greetings. This is my first time. It's about damn time.
Just like last week, favorite moment, least favorite moment, and has your opinion of the show changed at all this week? And if so, why?
Oh, episode 8. We need to talk about episode 8. I'm just going to say, I think I'm going to predict right now that everyone's favorite moment is probably going to be the same as mine, and that is the first instant we saw Ryoko in her classic outfit. And as Dagon, you pointed out so very well previously in some of our discussions, this was the first time we've seen that outfit since 1999. And it's incredible how nostalgic seeing that again made me feel. And so that's definitely going to be my favorite. In conjunction with that, just seeing the whole homage to the first episode of Tenchi Universe that was in the second half of episode 8. That was really fun. Mahoshi's mech and the chase of Ryoko, fun stuff all around. They're definitely going for the classic feel in that episode, and I thought that was the episode where things really, really came home for me for this show. Least favorite episode? God, I really don't even think I have one for this. Unlike last week's episodes, there really wasn't any gratuitous fan service. There wasn't any ridiculous panty shots or strip scenes. It was all really, really tastefully done, and honestly, I think if we're gonna count the recap episode, maybe just the recap episode. I mean, we all don't like recap episodes, so I think that might just be my favorite because honestly, I can't really pick a least favorite from the series this week so far.
I think Chuck's prediction is going to be 100% true in one sense because, a little background, I came into Tenchi Muyo by watching Tenchi Muyo in Love on the Sci-Fi Channel in 1997, and then I started buying the VHS tapes, the first of which was Tenchi Universe Volume 1. So what was the first episode, or full episode of the show that I ever watched? Universe Episode 1. I watched this week's Episode 8 in Tenchi Muyo. I see Ryoko sitting there. I see Mahoshi come out in her mech. They're in the same gear from that episode. My heart just went a flutter, and I went, "Ah, Lord, I'm home! Lord, I'm home! Don't wake me up! I'm home!" It was delightful to see them in their old personalities, in their old costumes. Ryoko was brash and commanding. Mahoshi was a little bubbly, but she was also trying to be serious about going after Ujukaizo Ryoko. Feels good, man. Feels good. On the other side of the coin, while this is not my least favorite moment, is one that a lot of people have brought to my attention, is in episode 9, the very next episode, when Tenchi and Ukon are having their little exchange, and Ukon's essentially teasing Tenchi. What she does is Tenchi's rummaging through his bag, and she notices the sword in his bag, which, much like in OVA 1 episode 1, he has the sword hilt in his book bag. So she pulls it out and starts teasing him with it. And I've heard a lot of folks who did not appreciate that joke. That it's very kind of very innuendo, very off color. Some people actually have found it off-putting. I didn't find it too off-putting because, to be honest, the sword has been phallic imagery since OVA 1 episode 1. That joke's been there for this whole time. Someone had to pick it up. However, I will want to say that joke was there for a significant reason, at least in the way I'm viewing the series, is because the sword Tenchiken, the sword Tenchi, the Jiraiyan ki that Tenchi uses as a weapon, that key has not been seen since 1999 when in Tenchi Muyo and Love 2, Yosho used the sword key to cut down Haruna's tree and essentially wake her up so that the ending of Tenchi Muyo and Love 2 could actually follow through. Folks, it's been 15 years since we've seen Tenchiken. So in a way, it makes sense to actually have this long, prolonged scene where somebody's showing the sword off, making a point that it's there, and what it is. So Ukon actually making a bad joke about it, it brings attention to the sword and says, "Hey, the sword is here. It's right here. Don't you see it? This is the sword." Maybe that might not have been the best way to do it. Maybe there could have been more tasteful ways to do it. But either way, Tenchiken's here, and and I'm hoping it stays. So I found there is that one scene that people have found very off-putting.
My favorite scene this week is, of course, to make our prediction possibly true, the scene where Ryoko shows up in her classic outfit, and not just that, but I liked the entire escalation of conflict, the entire thing from how they're going into the story about the demon to showing this horrific face, this very classical Japanese art style, and then you just see Ryoko's, round features just munching away at some food. She turns and looks at the camera. It's just like, what? Like, what'd you say about me? I thought that was just so perfectly done. And then the fight escalates between her and Hachiko, and then Mahoshi just comes out of nowhere after Momo knocks Ryoko out, pops out of her suit, does the little giggle and everything. That felt like old Tenchi, and I think that if anything should prove to people that while the show is currently wrapped with multiple storylines and people are not enjoying the high school storyline, Negishi and his people know Tenchi. They understand what makes it special for people. Everybody pretty much is fallen in love with that scene because it reminds them so much of the way things went in Universe and the OVA. It's the characters that they remember and love. Like even in the episode previous where they were in the home, you could still tell it was them. Of course, it was in their new outfits and wasn't quite as action packed. But I would definitely say that I think my favorite was Ryoko in her classic outfit, dishing some damage and getting some fight on. That's our girl. Least favorite part of this week is, at first I was kind of okay with it, but now I'm a little sad about the need for the reruns because, or not reruns, but recap episodes because I do kind of feel like they are wasting a bit of time. They're interesting in one particular way, and that's for additional characterization from Momo. But do we necessarily need to spend those 3 minutes on that? Right now, I'm not totally convinced that we do. It's an interesting way to end the week, but I'm starting to not really be all with the recap episodes anymore. So that would probably be my least favorite. But then again, I think that also speaks to the quality of how well this week went. That there's nothing else to complain about. Just we got a recap episode. Why didn't I get another one of these really good episodes?
When it comes to favorite episode, in reality, actually episode 7. The reason why episode 7 is because it's the first time, I believe, we see Ryoko. She's in the present. First time we see Ayaka and Sasami. I mean, it was so much that we know of Momo and the newer cast, but we don't really get to say, like, oh, it feels like old Tenchi until episode 3 when Washu is irreverent. And then I'm like, okay, we see Washu, and it's time to get into that. So, and I'm actually not even lying about this. The moment Tenchi is in the bath and we see Ryoko, even though she's a little bit different in outfit, but we see Ryoko and I hear Orikasa-san, her voice as Ryoko, it just, I squealed like a little girl. I did, honestly. I'm not even going to be admitting as a man, I squealed like a girl because that was my crush of a woman. So when she first appeared on there, it was just amazing. Now, I will say episode 8 did win me over as well because of the fact we see Ryoko in her old outfits and from Universe and Mahoshi and that same characteristic, and that brought me back to Tenchi TV or Tenchi Universe. So seeing that moment in that episode, even though it was brief from that moment, felt good again. It was like, it feels like it's 1999 all over again. it made me so happy because Ryoko and Ayaka bickering. You can't have a Tenchi show without Ryoko and Ayaka's bickering. You can't. The fact that both of them, just going at each other for a brief moment in the arguments, it feels like old Tenchi again. It really did, and it's more than I can say from from previous incarnations, I guess. And it just feels so good, and it's good that they know the writing team and everyone knows about how they are, the relationship with Ryoko and Ayaka. You can't have that dynamic without those two in the show with the characters. Least favorite, I'm going to have to agree with everyone else here. The recaps was just really unnecessary. I could see like going down the line after 10 or 12 episodes in, I could see reason on that, but at the same time, I just felt them unnecessary as well. Aside from that, like I said, other than the downside within the same 2 episodes that I mentioned, the 7 and 8, my only downside on those would have to be just the fact that we don't get enough time with Ryoko.
I figure since my role is usually to buck the trend, I will say that episode 8 was one of my favorite moments.
Boo.
But believe it or not, I think there was one that I think shined a little bit more for me. And that was because last week, Tenchi was almost shown in a Seina-esque light. Extremely pushover. He was taken advantage of. Pretty much the whole gambit of what you would expect from, the typical harem protagonist. But this week, it was almost the complete opposite. It showed Tenchi in charge, and it showed that he wasn't just dumb. It wasn't that he was just, playing, it wasn't that he was playing stupid. He had a personality. When Benny goes to backhand him, like, oh, who are you? You've been taken advantage of. He stops her like, no, I'm the teacher. You have to, let's stop this. That was fantastic for me because that showed that we're getting a Tenchi that's not like OVA 3, that's not like GXP, that's not like all of these other shows where he's pretty much just like a cardboard box and a Lighthawk wing. This is a Tenchi who is essentially letting them have their way. And I think that was, Pi had talked about the Ukon incident. There were some people who had kind of, were like, oh, well, that's a joke. That would put me off a little bit. Honestly, I thought that was fantastic, not just because it kind of she was playing with Tenchi, because that's her whole thing. She's dominating Tenchi. That's what she likes to do. Tenchi turned it around in like 2 seconds, and, all of a sudden that made her mad, because it was just like, Tenchi is letting them do this to him. If he really needs to step in, he can, and he's shown that he can. He's very capable. I thought that was exceptional. It's subtle, but it's exceptional. And of course, naturally, I couldn't say I was a Tenchi fan if I didn't enjoy the fact that I will correct you, Chuck. It wasn't 1999. This is the first time that we've seen Ryoko in her classic garb since 1995, because Universe was the last time that she wore that.
Damn.
To say least favorite moment, I was talking with Chuck about this right before we started. I didn't really have one. If I had to be extremely nitpicky, I would say, where they put the tracker in episode 6, like they put it stereotypically in Tenchi's boxers. But, I mean, that really didn't bother me. It was on screen for 2 seconds, and then it was never brought up again. I think, as everybody in here will probably agree, this week of Tenchi Muyo really stepped it up, really showed people that, this is a classic Tenchi series in every sense of the word, and that the people who write the show, they know what they're doing. They know exactly what to do. And so I think that's why people are starting to warm up to it. So at very, very extremely nitpicky least favorite moment, we are finally introduced to the rest of the classic girls, Sasami, Ayaka, and Ryoko. What are your thoughts on how they were shown, and do you think the voice actors did justice to their classic character portrayals?
Okay, part 1, the characters themselves. I was very pleased, particularly with Ryoko. I think of all the characters, she was the most easily assimilating back into her old role of just, she's chilling in Tenchi's bathroom, just not caring, not a care in the world, because she missed him. So she didn't get to, in her own words, she didn't get to see him all day, so she was waiting for him in the bathroom to help him take a shower. And that's just classic Ryoko. So I think in terms of who got it best, I think it is Ryoko. Otherwise, the other two, Aika Sasami, the other two, Aika Sasami, they were both very well done as well. I thought. I mean, we don't see too much of Sasami and Aika. Sasami is very much doing what she's always been doing, cooking food and being adorable. I thought, yeah, she was all right, and Ayaka very much similar, just fighting with Ryoko. So in that respect, yeah, she re-entered her character role very well, I thought. Part two, the voice actors. Generally, I did not have a problem. I think you can definitely tell that it's been a while since they've taken on these roles. Some of them slid back into them more comfortably than others. I think the most notable example would probably have to be Chisa Yokiyama as Sasami. It's pretty obvious that her voice has gone down a few pitches over the years, and it's not a bad thing. It's just noticeable, and it came as a bit of a shock. I mean, it's been quite a while since they first donned those voices, and a lot of things have happened in their own life. I know Miss Yokiyama just recently had her first child, so I mean, congratulations to her for that. But time has definitely taken its toll, I would say, and I've used this I've used this comparison before. But in recent video game news, we have the Alien game, Alien Isolation, and they got almost all the voice characters, almost all the original actors back to voice the characters in one of the DLCs. And again, it's very obvious that it's been a very long time since these characters originally did their roles, and the voices are just not there. And the one character whose actor didn't reprise his role sounded spot on. It was like you couldn't tell a difference because they got a new character. And I think that is the good comparison to make for Ayaka, because she's the only one of the girls who did not get her original voice actors back, and she was the closest sounding one out of all of them. So as terms of voices go, I think it's going to be par for the course from here on out, but I was very impressed with Ayaka's replacement. I think she did a fantastic job.
I was fairly pleased to see Ayaka Sasami and Ryoko finally. I mean, when Ryoko came on board, much like Yoku said a moment ago, you saw Ryoko just hand Tenchi the showerhead, ale, and shit hit the fan like it always does. Ryoko was Ryoko, Tenchi was Tenchi. While their voices might not have been exactly the same, since it's been 20 years since they first had these roles, then there's going to be changes because people have matured, people are older. If they were in their 20s when they recorded this the first time, they're in their 40s now. And I know Chisa Yokiyama in particular, she's in her early 40s right now, having her first kid. Do a good job. I think they did perfectly good justice, because I mean, these people, most of them were the ones who gave us Tenchi in the first place. While their voices might not be exactly the same as we remember them, they still know who they're supposed to be playing, and they know what roles to take. Now, admittedly, also that also gives a bit of tenure to their positions, because as the Tenchi's ID mentions, if you remember back in episode 2, or is it episode 1? One of the two. You see episode 1. You see Tenchi's school ID, and it lists him as Masaki Tenchi, age 22 years, as opposed to when he's usually introduced, which is when he's like 16 or 17. Again, high school age. Now he's about late college or late undergraduate age. Years have passed since all of them have met. They almost always meet when Tenchi's in his teens. It's been probably about 5 years in story since he met them. As such, it's expected to have them mature a little bit, have their voices a little deeper. Even Sasami's voice being a little deeper makes a lot of sense if she went from being like 8 to being about 13. So I could deal with that. I can accept that. It's time that the characters matured. They've been at this for 20 years. Let them grow up a little bit. Let them go into a mentor role a little bit, maybe. What are my thoughts on how they were shown? Like I said, I think they did the roles spot on, and the voice actors did a very good job.
I was particularly impressed with Ayaka's new voice actress because of how well she picked up on all the individual subtleties of how the character is. She's a character of highs and lows. She goes from being very restrained and respectful and, very caring, soothing, Auntie Ayaka, basically, to, full tilt raging bitch mode in less than a second, and she picked up on that. She picked up on the sort of just the inflections, the way that the character is. It was perfect. It was like she didn't skip a beat. It is unfortunate that they weren't able to get the original voice actress back, but for good reason. She is retired completely, so there wasn't much they could have done there. But the new one, fantastic, and of course everybody else reprised their roles very well. As everybody mentioned, Sasami was obviously, deeper than she was before, and it was striking not just because, it wasn't even like a difference of from 8 to 13 for me, but it sounded like she had also, like she picked up smoking or something because of all the stress and the doing all the work for the family household. She was just, she had such a rasp about her that she did not have before. That was it was very interesting to hear. It doesn't really hurt the character, but it is definitely a bit of a take back when you consider how old that Sasami is supposed to be. Seeing them again was, of course, all fantastic. Pretty much everybody was very much how you remember them. The only difference being, I guess, Ryoko's outfit in episode 7 being what we saw in the promo art on the website. And I mean, what are you gonna do about that? She was still her. She was still her at the end of the day, and this little costume change ain't gonna do that. Ain't gonna change that.
Pretty much everyone's hit on point on everything, and like I said, I mentioned it before. Just the fact that seeing them on the entire the episode, for that whole episode, just like I said, brought me back to my nostalgic days in '99. I'm just sitting there drinking my last cans of Surge, just watching the episode after coming home from school. That's just from high school, and that's exactly what just came to my mind when I saw that whole episode. So I have to put the point the same with everyone else when it comes to Ayeka's voice. I give my commend to the new actress, and she obviously did her brushing up when it comes to getting Ayeka's characteristics and her voice completely correct. And and it feels great to know that her actions and everything on the episode just it feels still like nothing had changed with her. So it was so great to see that. And from what Pai addressed about, some of the characters who the original cast voices, so you can see the maturity in the characters and things like that, especially Sasami. And I'm grateful for that too. I'm complete 100% with what Pai was addressing about that. It is time that the characters showed some maturity. So I had no problem when it comes to like age difference with the voice actresses and the characters. It made sense because we've known these characters been existing for 15 years, and it's about time that we see the change in the characters in that much, especially as Sasami, because I mean, like I said, the Sasami is the one of the drastic change we see the most. So it didn't affect me or didn't bother me that much about it. I mean, especially when it came to, in my personal opinion, on Ryoko's voice for Orikasa-san, hearing her voice again, and then it kind of made sense. And like I said, I personally feel like just to see them existent within the show is good enough for me.
Right away, like many have mentioned, you can tell that everybody is older. Like, it is very much consisting of an older cast. Chisa Yokoyama being the most notable standout because she's trying to portray, an 11, 10, 11, well, more like 11 or 12-year-old girl, and she's in her, early to mid 40s. There's definitely a gap there, and it definitely kind of takes you back at first, but I think in a way it's kind of endearing because everybody's aged. Tenchi is aged, Ryoko's aged, Sasami's aged, and so have the people who are voicing them. So to me, it was a little bit jarring, but I almost don't know if I would have it any other way. It's very nice to have the actual progression of time be shown audibly as much as it is visually. Ayeka's Japanese Seiyu replacement, I think, much like everybody else said, she did a phenomenal job at doing Ayeka. Like, she nailed the stereotypical 90s princess laugh, that annoying laugh. She nailed Ayeka's mannerisms. And you can definitely tell that she's different, that she is very much a different voice actress. She did a phenomenal job, and so I give kudos to her for doing that. I think the people who fared the best out of that would be Ai Orikasa and Masami Kikuchi, that being Tenchi and Ryoka respectively. You can kind of tell that Ai Orikasa is older, but because she's always portrayed a deeper toned, sultry seductress, Yeah, I mean, it's perfect. Like, it just, you can have her jump right back into it, and she's Ryoko. Obviously, you can tell there's a little bit of age there, but, again, it's kind of in the same thing as Sasami. Like, it's very endearing, at least to me. Um, as far as their portrayal, how they're brought in, it's very symbolic to me that Tenchi is coming home, because that's what it feels like. He's coming home in episode 7, and we're kind of coming home as fans because this is the first time that we're seeing these characters perfectly portrayed again. Like, exactly how we remembered them, just in a new setting, in a new adventure, next time on Tenchi Muyo. See you next episode. I thought they were portrayed perfectly. A perfect logical progression of where they would be, how they would be older, and what they would be doing. And so I definitely think that their portrayal, as well as their voice actors, they did a great job. Voice acting was a little different, obviously, for Ayaka's replacement and the age difference, but I mean, it was like coming home. This series, I Tenchi Muyo, first and foremost, was made as an advertisement series for the city of Takahashi in Okayama Prefecture. What are your thoughts on how they've handled the promotion side in the episodes so far?
Well, as our listeners will know, I was quite fearful when the announcement first came down that the show was going to be produced by Takahashi City as an advertisement. I was kind of really afraid that it would just be nothing but an endless series of infomercials about places in Takahashi. Like, the characters would go, "Oh, here's such and such burger joint. Let's go something here," and then have no plot. I am very happy to say that that has been completely the opposite of what this show has done. It's been very subtle. The marketing that's been done. Usually, it's not even plot related. Usually, it's just something that one of the characters will mention offhand, like, "Oh, this is the same size as this garden in Okayama City," or, "Oh, this is just like this castle over there in the other half of Okayama Prefecture." And so it's actually really been it's actually almost been pretty fun and entertaining trying to figure out, okay, where's the next little place they're going to drop this hint in. And I'm very pleased with how unobtrusive and unassuming these tourism spots are. And I've actually, shameless promotion here for myself, if you visit Tenchiforum.com and visit the I Tenchi Muyo section of the forum, I've actually started a thread where I'm cataloging all of the real world locations that are mentioned in I Tenchi Muyo. And so far there's been a couple, and they all look really interesting to me. There's been, like I said, there's been a botanical garden in Okayama City. There's been a castle, which is actually one of the only original castles left in Japan. There's been a real famous peach orchard where you can go and pick peaches for a day. And all in all, it makes me really, really, really want to go to Takahashi City and Okayama Prefecture. So I think it's done a really good job, and I couldn't be more pleased with how unobtrusive it has been. And I find myself now looking forward to the next little shout out to Okayama Prefecture.
Actually, I don't have much to say on this topic because I've been focusing on the plot and characters more so. As such, the advertisement has been very non-obtrusive. I haven't really paid much attention to it. Again, they've made comparisons to things, they've made references to things, but mainly they've just been kind of for sake of scale and size. I mean, this excavation is as big as as big as such and such castle. It's as big as a castle. It's fucking huge. Another reference was how big this campus is compared to a particular botanical garden. Again, it's in many ways it's just making the location feel more real. That all of this could actually be a feasible location somewhere. All in all, the advertisement hasn't really been that obtrusive to the story. Hasn't prevented me from enjoying. I've enjoyed the hell out of the show. So the advertisement's definitely not getting in the way. But unlike Chuck, I haven't been the guy who's been. Oh my god, I gotta go to Takahashi City. It's been kind of like, huh, that's kind of a cool little fact, and moved on. So it hasn't roped me into going to Takahashi City, but we still have 40 more episodes to go through, so we'll see what it is like by the end.
I remember a lot of the freak out and worry. People were worried, essentially, that there was going to be fourth wall breaking, extremely obtrusive, kind of like the old sitcoms where a man would be sitting down at the table with his wife, and they'd be talking about things, and all of a sudden he'd turn to look at the camera and go, before work I feel like the dead, but with my daily cup of damn good coffee by Coffee Incorporated, I feel like a brand new man. Damn good coffee by Coffee Incorporated. Then he gives a little wink to the camera, like, it's thankfully not been that bad. It's still noticeable, like whenever they name drop a place, it's it's still like, oh, okay, it kind of takes you out in that moment for a little bit, but it's not so obtrusive that it's offensive. It's been pretty tastefully done, and a lot of it has actually been smashed into Momo's recap episode, like little monologues where she'll talk about things like that. So it usually stays pretty far out of the way of the actual show itself, which I think is just fantastic. I don't mind it, and I'm it's entertaining. It's not fully educational, but it basically gives you a breadcrumb to start the trail on. Like they say, well, here's the name of this place, and then you say, I wonder what that place is like. So then if you got curious enough, you could look online and say, oh, wow, yeah, that's one of the last remaining Japanese castles in the country, the original Japanese castles in the country, and that's pretty crazy. It's like, oh, it's cool that Momo knew that. So, it's not bad. It is far cry from what we all feared, and I'm very thankful for that.
I personally believe, like, at first, it's going to sound weird, Pi, because I feel like I agree with you so much in what you've been discussing on your part, because it's funny. But yeah, I have to go once again on that same agreement. It's with Pi on the fact of it was just too much. I was too dived in the show to even realize the cultural references and the advertisements and it because the story and the characters and everything is so much into it, you kind of forget that it's supposed to be made as an advertisement for the city of Takahashi. And while I already know a little cultural history in Takahashi myself through my years of studying in Japan, I do know, like I said, the fact of like the little references that they put in each of the episodes. I mean, it's tend to useful and source because it was not like it was more dived into the historical. Because when they had announced the show, first thing came to my head was, and I don't know if any of you remember this, but in the third OVA series and Ryo-Ohki series, there is a feature in one of the DVDs in which they do a video documentary on the actual references, the actual places they go to within Okayama that they used for references for the show. There was even one, the actual cave shrine that was used to inspire for Ryoko's sealed shrine. They even put a standee of Ryoko there, and it was live video document footage of all the areas, including areas that were used to refer to some of the characters' names even. And that was the first thing that came to my mind when they announced about the series. And now looking at the series going in from the first few 9-10 episodes, now it's entirely different from that.
I will have to agree with most people in here, but I thought it was actually pretty clever how they did it with Momo because, this is something Neil had mentioned, or they did it almost like she was an idiot savant. Like, one minute she's dumb, like dumb as a sack of rocks, but then the next minute she'll rattle off foot for foot the exact dimensions of a particular cultural spot in Okayama. So you get your history and your tourism in, while also providing, some interesting character development through Momo on the side. I know some people are not fans of the recap, but I think I prefer the recap to something like, like a stereotypical school field trip to these places, or, trying to find a way to actually fit the place into the show, because the way the plot is working right now is you'd think for 3 minutes of content that it would be very sporadic, but it's actually very well done and very smooth, and the progression is very, very, it's very easy to follow. But I think trying to attempt to put those in there, or try to, do the Wayne's World moment where, he sips the Pepsi and it's like, oh yeah, the taste of a new generation, stuff like that, I think would be much more detrimental than the recap episodes were, lesser of two evils, but I prefer the recap with a little bit of Momo's insight and them pushing a little bit more of Takahashi City stuff than them attempting to try to find a way to work that into the plot so that way they can write the plot out how they want it to and then kind of fall back on the recap episodes and a little bit of narration over top to maybe fill their quota for how much they want to have, because as we know, Takahashi City paid for all of the advertisement of the series. They raised money to do it. So I think that the show has handled the promotion spectacularly. They could have done it a whole lot worse. And now we're going to open it up to final thoughts and general discussion.
Will say, just briefly, that I think week 2 has really solved all of the problems, the few that were presented by week 1. This is Tenchi through and through, people. Like, when I see people whining about, and I will use the word whining, I'm sorry, it's true. Like, oh, her hair is different, or oh, like, it doesn't feel like Tenchi. Like, I'm sorry, people. I'm sorry that the hair is different, but it is 2014. Styles change, and this is about as close to real classic Tenchi as we probably were ever going to have for a show like this. So I just want to say, people out there, just enjoy the show. For goodness sakes, people, come on. It's not bad, and that's really the best we could have hoped for. In fact, this week has shown that it's getting good, and it's getting good fast.
So to cut in, we have started something new this week, and we're for the podcast, for the community, to involve you all, the listeners. We are now doing what's called the Talkback, which is actually inspired by, I believe, the Toonami podcast that Yoku is friends with. They do a sort of hashtag thing on Twitter where people can use the hashtag to talk about their thoughts on that week's Toonami, and then they will talk about it on the podcast. What we're doing now is basically the same thing with hashtag #ITenchiTalkback, and we will have that in the video description so you can see exactly how to use it so we can see it, as well as being posted to the respective post on Facebook when it is made. You can have your thoughts read aloud on the show, and we may comment on them. This week we kind of started it with a shotgun, just put it up right as Friday was ending, so we don't have a whole lot of comments to pull from this time, but we do have a few. The first one is just a general please comment by Spooky Julia on Twitter. She says, Ryoko was fucking awesome, and that's all she has to say there, and I think we can all agree on that one pretty heartily. So I'll move to the next one instead, which does require a little bit of commenting. Is a comment from Max, I believe it's Crazy Man, on Facebook. He said, what's with the student council versus science club stuff? I'm not really feeling it. And I think, Max, that you are definitely with a lot of folks right now who don't really care for it. Some may not understand exactly what's going on, others probably do. What we found out about the show was that it was borrowing some elements from a Japanese legend called Momotaro, or Peach Boy. Obviously, you could draw the immediate comparison between Momotaro and Momo, whose name is, of course, Momo. What's going on here is, it seems like, and I don't know if this is something that Negishi and the writers came up with, or if it was something that Takahashi insisted on, because apparently Takahashi is famous for their peaches, as has been explained in one of the episodes. But Momotaro was a person who came to Earth inside of a giant peach and was found by a pair of older people who raised the boy, and he would later go on to have a adventure. Along the way, he has to fight demons, or ogres, in the story on an island. And en route, they find he meets a dog, which is Hachiko, named after a Japanese dog who would refuse to leave its owner's side. A monkey, who we've decided is Hana, I think from the arms on her legs and some other small details about her personality, and the pheasant, which is Tori, because I believe Tori's name directly translates to bird, or some sort of. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, Tori in Japanese is bird.
some sort of direct avian reference, as well as the kind of like, she has like a weird cowlick on her head, which kind of represents the pheasant's sort of sticking up feather, the head feather, as it were. So, they are very obviously meant to be that group that helped Momotaro on his quest. As for the demons or the ogres in the story, we have the other side. We have the science club, who is represented. They don't actually have direct representation to any characters in the legend that I can think of, but they do, if you notice, both clubs wear name tags. The student council, which represents Momo, Taro, and his motley crew, they all wear peach insignia with their names on it. The science club has demon or ogre heads. They're kind of black instead of the pink ones that the other side uses, and that's their name tag, and it's kind of shaped like a bit of a screaming demon head, or maybe one that has its teeth bared and ready to bite. So, what's going on there? It's the Legend of Momotaro. It's being made into something about it is being brought into the Tenchi multiverse, as it were, along with everything else that's going on. So it is a legitimate conflict that has happened in Japanese legend, and it's almost directly being referenced character for character. I don't know if we could look to the book itself and find out what's going to happen with Momo and the other characters as they progress, but it is a story that is very strongly associated with Okayama and some of the prefectures. So my guess is that Takahashi City basically threw that idea out there, like, well, what if, to help make this feel more regional, we basically had characters that were from the Legend of Momotaro, and Negishi and the rest of them were like, well, we can't really fit the current staff and cast in there into that story very well, so that's where the new girls come from, Legend of Momotaro.
There's also something, just, real quick, that I want to throw in that Chuck had, before he left, had touched upon, and something I've touched upon in the past, is, on the same train of thought as, Max had said, Crazy Man, he, a lot of people are saying, well, why should I care about these characters? And I said, well, we've only just met them. Like, we have had 10 episodes. That is very true. But total time is just under, actually 4 minutes short of 2 regular episodes. So really it's an episode and a half. A real world equivalent of that would be like meeting someone new for the first time who's friends with somebody that you've known for a long time, and then are you going to take a bullet for them? Or are you going to be like, you are my best friend. I really like you. I'm going to take a bullet for you. No, that's not how that works. You have to build it up a little bit. And even though you want to see your friend, this person could become your friend too. A lot of people let it grow a little bit. I know, that a lot of people, we don't really know a whole lot about these girls. We, like Neil had just said, we know slightly of their connection to the Momotaro legend, but we haven't had a whole lot of backstory with anybody other than Benny and Momo, and I mean, really, I think those two girls, you have enough, even from what we've seen, to really start to get behind them. But for the sake of everybody else, just give it a little bit of time, because how many shows, how many episodes, or how many anime have you seen that you've immediately just completely got behind the characters in 1 or 2 episodes? I've definitely done it myself, but there are some anime that are my favorite that took me like 5 episodes to get into before I really started to get behind the characters. So just give it a little bit of time, or as Guns N' Roses once said, just give it a little bit of patience.
Actually kind of gone into detail about that in my mega post in this week's thread on the forum, about how there's so much going on with this new series that if you compare it to what happened in the first 25 to 28 minutes of OVA 1 and Tenchi Universe, it contains astronomically more amount of information, more characters being introduced. Like in the first OVA, we see Tenchi, we see Ryoko, and we see like Nobuyuki. Like we don't see a whole lot of people. We barely see anybody. We guess we see the his friends. We get to see some of his school life, but it's very brief. There's not a whole lot of characterization that's going on, and it's pretty much just Tenchi Ryoko as her demon form, and then Ryoko turned back into a humanoid on the roof of the building, and that's it. It's obviously reductionist, but for time's sake, I don't really want to go into it. But there's about 6 or 7 bullet points for OVA 1. Tenchi Universe contains a little bit more because we learn a little bit more about Ryoko in that time frame than we did beforehand in OVA 1, though we also have the benefit of knowing more about her from OVA as well, so it's kind of hard to truly judge that. And then we also see Mahoshi. We get to see Katsuhito, Nobuyuki kind of perving out the fact that, oh man, Tenchi's got a girl in the house. There's a little bit more going on in episode 1 of Tenchi Universe, about 8 or 9 bullet points instead. The first 25 minutes of Tenchi, not even counting, or maybe I did count the recap as part of that, but there's so much. We've been introduced to double the amount of characters that were in the full series from the get-go in Tenchi, and we're also getting to see, we get to see the new girls, we get to see the old girls. We know how the old girls are, and we realize in this very short period of time they have not changed one bit, so there's really nothing we need to catch up on there. As for the new girls, they've barely been given enough screen time to be endeared, and I think that people should definitely give them a little bit more time. Right now, are they making convincing arguments for themselves? Not entirely, but they've barely had the time to, because we've Negishi's doing the plot moving forward, that they haven't had too much time to really give each character an individual episode, kind of like how they did in Universe, and the OVA as well, where each girl got basically a whole episode to introduce themselves and become a part of the family, as it were. They haven't had that opportunity to do so here, simply because there isn't the time. And maybe they will get something like that later on in the future, which would definitely be nice. But I think we need to give them a little bit of time. Something else that we talked about with Greg on the forums and on the YouTube channel was Ryo-Ohki's missing. And we have not seen one bit of her yet in the art for the series. We have not seen her one bit yet in the story proper. We don't know where she is. He's afraid that she may not show up, and maybe she won't. We can't tell for sure. It's still very early. But something else that we have to take into consideration is how long some characters took to arrive. In OVA 1, Washu Hakubi did not appear until halfway through the very final episode of OVA 1. Unless you count Night Before the Carnival, which isn't numerically correct. But episode 6 of OVA 1, she did not appear until halfway through. And somehow, she was instantly endeared to people, but she did not show up until almost the very end, until there was almost, the story was over. They already written her in as far out as that when they started doing the show. So when it started taking off, beforehand, they had no idea if and when there'd be more Tenchi. Hayashi had assumed that there would be just one and done, and then suddenly it blew up, and that would have been it for Washu. She would have had 10 minutes of screen time compared to all the rest of the characters. 10 minutes of screen time. And it took her almost till the very end. We've also had some delay in characters. Ryo-Ohki herself does not show up in OVA 1 until a couple episodes later. Universe a couple episodes later. So, she may be there. We just have, I guess, Ryo-Ohki shows up in ship form in Universe pretty much right away. But she takes a little bit to show up in the respective series. So, don't count anybody out just yet. Let's keep watching. Let's keep waiting. We still have 40 episodes left to go. So there's still plenty left to come. They're still getting to some of the main driving forces behind the characters in this series. So there's plenty of time and opportunity to introduce these older characters. So let's not panic just yet. Let's be patient and see what happens.
For those out there who are new to my work about that, first off, I'm always active on Twitter. So twitter.com/Yoku Masaki. You'll see me talking a lot Tenchi Batman wise, which is another obsession of mine. Everything else, some of my music as well. As I'm pretty sure that Neil and everyone knows, or here on Tenchicast, I'm working with Sovereignty, who's a style designer from LA, who is also a Tenchi fan. We're working on something, hopefully with her clothing, streetwear, which will be coming up in the promising future. I can't confirm it on that, but I can confirm that it will be something in development soon. So you'll definitely know about that, and I'll definitely be passing that on to the people at Tenchicast and Tenchiforum. Also, like I said, follow me on Facebook, who is Yoku Masaki. Check me out on Twitter, YouTube, my videos. Also, YokuMasakiBandcamp.com, my entire discography. Working on I'm working on a couple projects in perspective of it. Of course, I am going to be working on a Tenchi project. So far, the only thing I've released officially is my collaboration with nerdcore rapper Kadesh Flow. We did a song for Tenchi called Get Out My House. Look it up on YouTube. You can also check it on my Bandcamp and my SoundCloud page. Shout out to Kadesh Flow. Shout out to Richie Branson. Shout out to Mega Ran. There hopefully will also be joining me in this project as well. It will be dealing with Tenchi, of course, as well, this project. But I'm also working on non-related nerdcore projects as well, including my follow-up to my release album that I recently released, Delta Nexus, which is out now. I'm also working on a Batman-related project, which also will be coming soon. Also, like I said, this probably won't be the last time you'll hear me on Tenchicast, because these guys I've been a fan of their work, and I'm just appreciate the fact that being on here with these guys just to talk about Tenchi, because like I said, 15 years down the line, I've been a fan of this universe, this entire universe, and to express it enough is an understatement. Just to say that I'm just a big obsession of this show is an understatement. So, like I said, Twitter, Facebook, everything. Like I said, I'll be posting everything on there as well. They'll probably post my work and everything on there too. But like I said, check out my stuff. Shout out to Sovereignty. Like I said, shout out to my friends over at the Toonami Fateful podcast. You should definitely check them out as well. My boy Palm Skrillo, my boy Daryl Maddox, Zero Alucard, all my boys over there. Shout out to the Toonami Fateful who've been following me ever since day one, since the revival of Toonami. You should definitely check out their podcast as well. Shameless plug on there. You won't hear me as much on there as well. I also want to give a shout out to sfoots.com. They also posted one of my interviews with more in depth of how I got my name and how everything else related to my musical journey to where I am now. So definitely check that out. Also, hopefully I'm in a transitional situation. But if you didn't get a chance to see my Tenchi panel, I will be bringing it back, but hopefully I'll be bringing it back to another convention. I can't say where or when, but I will be, and hopefully in the future. So you'll definitely check me out, and hopefully Tenchiforum will be there as well. But I want to thank everybody who went to my panel at Glass City Con, who was there as well. And of course, I want to thank Daigon for helping me out at that panel too, because me and Daigon, that's how things started rolling here. So I want to personally thank Daigon for helping me out at the panel as well. So
Indeed, and it was a pleasure and lots of fun. And for everybody listening, and Yoku and everyone in the mobile server right now, thank you very much for being a part of Tenchicast 25. No Need for Tenchi Muyo Part 2. If you are a fan, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Google+, Tumblr, every little social media aspect you can think of, we're probably on it. And don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube. And if you are a fan of Tenchi Muyo and would love to discuss it, Tenchiforum.com is the place where the carnival never ends, much like the discussion. And if you are looking to watch Tenchi Muyo as it is coming out, Tenchiforum Translations is translating it every single day and is posting a supercut each of the 5 episodes that come out that week into a single episode. And until next time, stay gold.